And what, as a contemporary curator, how do you think the contemporary art scene has evolved and changed since, over the years?
I think the internet is a huge game changer, especially after COVID. There have been studies showing that because of COVID, people are finally comfortable with purchasing art online.
How do you think is the American market different from the Parisian market and the European market? Do you see, like specifically, how do you see what are the major differences you see? Let's talk about that.
I think that in general, American art is more recent. I mean, European history goes back further than American history because America was founded after most countries in Europe. I think that the American art market has always been a bit subversive. It was started as an outsider market where a lot of avant-garde artists decided to play against the rules, and I think it still has a spirit today.
Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. And today I have Natasha with me. Welcome to the podcast, Natasha.
Thank you, Chiriga. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to discuss with you today.
I am looking forward to it. Natasha, okay, before we go forward, would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, so that our listeners can get familiar with that?
Sure. So I'm Natasha. I am a curator, an art writer, and also a freelance translator, French and English. I'm currently based in Paris, where I work for an online gallery, Singulart. So we are not only an online gallery, we also have some physical events and physical pop-ups. So I am on the curation team as the chief curator and head of content and merchandising there. And we work a lot with artists to create online collections. We have a physical store in Stuttgart. We work with artists through social media, through our collection, through our newsletters to promote our international roster to our global community. And so I am helping with not only the curation in terms of the selection of artists, the presentation of their work and their stories, but also on the merchandising side. So, how we can best show the artwork in a more commercial view to our collectors and clients and really empower artists through also that e-commerce side of things.
Oh, wonderful. Tell me something. What do you think, being a contemporary, like curator, your lens as a curator today is different from the curators that we've had over the years? And how has the contemporary market evolved for artists also?
So when I was at La Sorbonne, which is in Paris, it was my school for my master's. I decided to specialize in contemporary art, and what I found particularly captivating about contemporary art was the shift in the zones of interest of art. So it wasn't just two or three major cities in Europe that were controlling the narrative. There were artists coming from many regions, Latin America, the Caribbean, uh, Africa. So that was really excited me, and how they were making really a changing platform and really having their voice heard by people all over the world, especially with the rise, of course, of the internet. And my thesis was on Caribbean women artists and how their unique perspectives were changing the voices of contemporary art. So I think I've always had that point of view and perspective in terms of when I curate, in terms of when I select art. It's how can I listen to artists who perhaps are less listened to? How can I promote artists to an audience that they may not have heard of before? And how can I create compelling collections, exhibitions, articles using groups of artists in a way that we can tell their stories either in conceptually or visually. So that's always been my sort of point of view as a curator.
And what, as a contemporary curator, how do you think the contemporary art scene has evolved and changed since, over the years?
I think the internet is a huge game changer, especially after COVID. There have been studies showing that because of COVID, people are finally comfortable with purchasing art online in a way that they weren't before. So we've seen the rise of online auctions, we've seen the rise of digital and exhibitions, virtual galleries. So I think this has been a huge change. And what's really great about it is it transcends boundaries. You don't have to travel physically to art fairs. You can go online and see artists from all across the world. And I think that's really changed the landscape of art, especially in the past few years.
What brought you into the art specifically? What has been your journey? Why did you choose to become a curator?
So I guess it started. We can go back to my high school years. My first ever academic experience with art history was in high school, and I took an art history class 101, very basic, as an elective, and I really loved it. I fell in love with the study of art and how the visual had cultural and historical meaning. And I took more classes when I arrived in college for my undergrad. And after taking a few classes, I realized that there were no classes I enjoyed more than those of art history. So I majored in it. And I got my first internships right after college at museums. So I was an intern at the Hirshhorn, which is the Smithsonian's Modern and Contemporary Museum, where I got to research and design my own museum tours. And that really deepened my love, especially for museums, as well as research, as well as art writing, and how to translate the visual arts into storytelling. And then I was also a gallery guide at the Whitney Museum. And after having these experiences with museums, I knew I wanted to take my studies further. So that's what brought me to Paris. I am French American, so I always had this dream to live in Paris. And I thought, why not for my master's? So that's how I ended up at Sorbonne, where I did my master's in art history and I was specializing in contemporary art.
How do you think is the American market different from the Parisian market and the European market? Do you see, like specifically, how do you see what are the major differences you see? Let's talk about that.
I think that in general, American art is more recent. I mean, European history goes back further than American history because America was founded after most countries in Europe. I think that the American art market has always been a bit subversive. It was started as an outsider market where a lot of avant garde artists decided to play against the rules. And I think it still has a spirit today. And I think even today, when we look at the contemporary market, the integration of things like cultural studies or activism art, we see a lot of those things that originate in the Americas, not only North America, but also in Latin America and South America. And I think that is what makes the art market in America quite fascinating. Of course, the European market is historic. It has its place in art history, of course, and I think it's
It's more like Renaissance and like Baroque, Art Deco, like all the movements, like, and it's how more sophisticated and like I think I'd say, um, yeah, like culturally more contextual.
Yes, and I would say also when you're in a lot of major cities in Europe, you see the art around you. You're walking um, past buildings that were built in, the Baroque era, the Renaissance era, and I think what's great about the European art market or just European culture in general is the remembering a culture, the something as simple as having a sign of where you are that explains the history of a place. Or I always find that so fascinating, and I think especially in France there's a lot of remembering history and acknowledging the architects or the artists who have built the city around us.
Did you ever think of yourself becoming an artist? Was that ever like something that you thought about, like, why not paint yourself and like since
I was never much of a artist in terms of the actual creating of art. I did take one or two classes in university. Um, it's very difficult. I think what it taught me is that art is not just about this innate talent. It is a lot of work and technique, and it takes practice, and it takes so much to become a master of art, along with talent. But I think I really found my niche and my own art more so in writing or more so interpreting things like painting or sculpture, or how to take a collection of works and create a narrative around it. So maybe that more creative directing or art direction type of creation is more my thing, as opposed to creating actual art, which I respect artists so much for.
what is exciting for you now as a curator? Like, I think, like, I can say from an artist perspective, like I can see how many things have changed from before to now, how the landscape has changed. But I'd love to hear from you as a curator, also moving from America to Paris. How has that opened up your thought process sometimes when we move from place to place, like, a lot of cultural background changes, people behavior changes, like your role as a curator in contemporary art scene. What do you think, how has that evolved actually?
I think that in my own role as a curator, I take a lot of aspects from my American culture and a lot of aspects from my French culture. So, for example, in my American culture, I always love to find what's new, what's fresh, what's avant-garde, what's happening that's a bit on the zeitgeist. And then with my French culture, I love analyzing what references from history, what is the artist taking from the past and reusing. So I think using the different aspects of culture is really interesting in the way people analyze art. I'm also Haitian, so I think that view of Haitian history with the Haitian Revolution and the bright music and food, things like that always make me also analyze art for its colors, its emotion, and even things like voodoo, which is found in Haitian art, like the religion and the landscapes. I always find so I think being in different cultures and even cultures that are not my own, traveling really inspire me to look at art in different ways. So I think it's just being shaped by not only my own cultures, but traveling and experiencing new cultures, new perspectives. I think that's one of the most important things in life. So I think that's reflected also in the way I search for art, the way I try to experience art, and how I try to organize exhibitions, collections, and promote artists.
And how do you think how as a young curator, your relationship, building relationship with artists, working with artists, what is your approach to it?
I think working for an online gallery, the best tool we have is the internet. So, and also a large database of artists who we represent on our website. So, we've been able to do a lot of studio visits to create content for our social media, for our newsletter. And I think that being internet savvy and using our platform to meet and discover and promote artists has been really great as a young curator. I think also people my age, meeting other young curators, meeting my peers who are students and who are now working in the art world, keeping up with them and what they're up to has also been really great in terms of the museums that they are working at or even the collectives that they're founding. So that has been another way that I think being young, you're always quite excited to create a community. And I think that's one thing that I've definitely done, especially here in Paris.
How do you open up that conversation with artists? How do you build more meaningful relationships? And how do you also find artists that speak to you?
So I find artists in many different ways. One way is visiting galleries. So of course, Paris has many, many galleries and many amazing contemporary galleries. So as simple as going to neighborhoods that have a high concentration and discovering work in person and then doing more research afterwards. Instagram has been really great for discovering artists as well. I've learned a lot about, for example, Haitian art. It's one of my specialties. So I also seek out new Haitian artists, whether that be through exhibitions or online. But it's really a combination of spontaneous discovery and active research for specific maybe regions or styles that I like.
How do you think online galleries today have changed the art market specifically?
I think it has made art buying more transparent. I think it can be intimidating walking into a physical.
Do you think that more people are buying art online right now?
Yes, I do. I think studies have shown that people are, and I think it's people who are first time art buyers are increasing. People who are perhaps do not consider themselves collectors or who would perhaps not purchase from a classical gallery or blue chip gallery would feel more comfortable going online. I think that a lot of websites.
I think it's also opened up. It's made easier.
Yes, it's democratized art in a way. And I think also we've seen the rise of not just original art, but also prints and posters online. So having a piece of art in your own home, in your own apartment, in your dorm room, it's become so much more easier. So I think that the internet has completely changed that. And on the more high end side, fine art, we've seen after COVID, people are purchasing works up to thousands and thousands of dollars online. And I think that what makes it easy is you see the price online most of the times. You can click, you have information about the artist, about the gallery, it's all in one place. And you don't have to know someone or be on a list. You can find it online. And I think it's so much more accessible, and for some people it's a lot less intimidating as opposed to going into a physical gallery or an art fair.
Absolutely, absolutely. What else? What do you think is the hardest part being a young curator today? What is the hardest thing for you?
That's a very good question. I think the hardest part is balancing the commercial interest, of course, of the market with academic, perhaps point of views, or deciding which artists to promote, uh, how to put together collections to make them appealing both in a conceptual way but also in a commercial way, because at the end of the day my job, unlike just a museum curator, I'm a gallery curator. It's to help artists live off their work, so I have to try to make collections and artworks appealing, and I have to think about that commercial side, which is not necessarily my interest, but it has been something that I've had to develop.
If I were to ask you like a secret tip, if a lot of artists who are listening to this episode who are as, young and fresh as you, what would that be for them to, let's say, sell more art?
I would say definitely get online. I think a personal brand is super important. You should have an Instagram with your work. You don't necessarily have to be the face of your brand. Your art can be your brand, but you should have a website. You should have an Instagram. You should be selling online. And sell on multiple platforms. So that would definitely be my biggest tip: is have a strong online presence, have a really easy to navigate personal website, and really make your art stand out.
What are your future plans now? Where do you aim to be? What's your goal? What's your dream? Let's hear that.
So I would love to continue helping artists to promote their work. I think my dream job will always include creating stories around collections of work, or promoting artists' stories. So whether that be at a museum or a gallery, I think the most important for me would be to continue to search for voices maybe that are not in the larger cities known for typically in the art world, but to promote their work. Also, perhaps to always create a community, whether that be online or in person, for people who are as passionate and like minded about art. So anything that includes that, I'll be happy for sure.
Perfect. And one last tip for anyone who's looking to get into, you know, being an art curator or get into the field. What's your one tip if?
I think that, of course, studying for this role is quite necessary for a lot of roles that are looking for curators. I think first you need to find your specialty, of course, and the best way to find your specialty is to discover what draws you in. So when you begin studying, which chapters of your art history book do you find yourself most excited to read, and then continue towards that path, and also never stop looking for art. I think the best way to be a strong curator is to have a strong point of view and to have strong tastes. And you can only do that if you have references, if you know the influences that an artist is taking from, if you can understand or connect artists from two different cultures, for example, and you can see similarities that maybe others can't and point it out. That's what makes a strong curator. So I think that means visiting museums, visiting galleries, reading, anything that can really strengthen your cultural references, your international point of view, different perspectives, and really make your eye really strong.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Natasha. It was so nice to speak to you. Where can people find you, support you? If there's anything that you want to share with us, Please go ahead.
Sure. So I am on Instagram. So that is one of the places where I post, my daily life, trips to museums and galleries, just life in Paris in general. I also have my website, natashaantone.com, where I post essays, guides, how to's, also some of my past work. I am a freelance translator and art writer as well. So I'm on Upwork. If you're looking to collaborate, feel free to reach out. But yeah, those are the ways you can reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Taruka.
Thank you.